Hey guys, let's do it. Chapter 9 study guide. So many of you may have already finished this, but we're just gonna, go back through and make sure you know it so you're ready for the test tomorrow. Okay, so a study of classic authors uncovered a distinguishable speech pattern that differed from the author to the author. So utilizing this speech pattern, Plato utilized 21.4% in his work. So what they're saying is that these are works that we know came from Plato. Maybe they were corroborated in some way. And so this distinguishable speech pattern had this, it was present in 21% of his passages. So this is the accepted truth, right? The proportion is or should be this if it is in fact Plato's work. So what does this mean? This is the proportion of this pattern in Plato's work. Okay. So what's the alternate hypothesis? Well, this is actually exactly how we authenticate people's work. And we kind of did this with Beyonce's song. The bookstore claims it has an original Plato work. You suspect, so you're suspicious that the speech pattern occurs too frequently. Too frequently. So you believe it's happening too frequently. So let's take a look just at our test statistics. So we do 136 divided by 439, and it's actually happening 30, that same speech pattern, 30% of the time, or 30.9795. So you suspect it, and then you actually took some passages. So because it says the word too frequently, I think I actually helped some people, and I didn't see those words too frequently. So I just kind of hung my hat on maybe that this was not equal to. But now that I saw those words, right, I just saw the word differed. And if it's just that it differed, you actually pick this. So if you just have a sneaky suspicion it differed from the null, but it sounds like our sneaky suspicion it happened too frequently. Okay. So I stand corrected. So how would we do this in the calculator? Well, what we're looking to do here is a stat test. So we go down to stat test, and this is a one proportion z-test. So our p0 is, if in fact this is Plato's work, we would suppose that this would be the proportion, and then we actually have data from the sample. So it says we had 136 out of a total in 439, and we have a sneaky suspicion that the proportion is something greater than that because we thought it was happening too frequently. Okay, so we hit enter, and notice we get a really crazy low p-value. That means we're walking through door number 1. So they give us kind of a layout. We should be able to state, plan, do, and conclude when we're doing a one sample z-test for proportion. Okay, so they don't give us a lot of room here, but let's prepare to do all the steps. State. We will perform a one sample z-test for proportion, or z-test for p. Also, what must we do? We must state our null and tell us what it is. So P, we believe the accepted truth is that it is Plato's work, and the alternate is that it's happening, this speech pattern is happening a little too frequently. So what is P? The proportion of this pattern present in the work, in the passage. Okay, so let's do some planning. I have to use this p-value, so I do n times p. has to be greater than or equal to 10. N times 1 minus P has to be greater than or equal to 10. So N is 439. And this is the proportion. 1 minus P would be this number, so 6, 8, 7. Okay. 439 times that. So let's see what that number is. This is my condition. So I suspected, if this is in fact the truth, I suspected to get 93.9, which is greater than or equal to 10. I suspected to get how many non-passages? So I get 345.1, which is also greater than or equal to 10. Did it say simple? Yes. So and then last, yes, it's safe to assume the population of all of Plato's works is at least 10 times the sample. So we presume that N is, I don't know if this step is, but if N is 439, and we're actually just looking at selected passages, that could be passages just within a single body of work. So there's lots of sentences and stuff Plato wrote down. So 10 times N is equal to 4390, and it's safe to assume our population is bigger than that, all of his work. Okay, so I did my plan. Now let's do my do. So what is my formula? Well, I have my test statistic. And I take my actual minus my predicted over my standard deviation. So I get p hat. Oh, I didn't do my p hat. Okay, so what is p hat? 136 divided by 439. And I calculated it up there. So it is approximately, okay, so that's 0.3098 minus 0.214 all over the square root of 0.214 times 0.786 all over n, 439. And what does this z value turn into? Well, if I look on here, I get a z value of 4.89. 4.89. So I get a p-value of a really ridiculously number, like 7 zeros and a 49, a super ridiculous number. So I've run out of room, but I'm going to try to squeeze this in. My conclusion. Since alpha is less than 0.05, 0.00000049 is less than 0.05, we reject, door number 1, we reject the null hypothesis. We do have sufficient evidence to support H sub A. What is H sub A? This is not Plato's work because it doesn't have the same pattern. that this isn't Plato's work. And this is exactly how we authenticate people's writing. There's been multiple plays that have been written, or even small passages and poems written by what we think is Shakespeare, found on paper that's the same age and the same time frame. And we use these methods to authenticate them. That is this Plato's work. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay, concept 2, can we use a confidence interval and does it give more information? So this is kind of cool. It's kind of merging both chapter 8 and 9. If we had a recent study to suggest that this is our percentage, so we kind of see this as our H sub O, right? However, we don't have an H sub O when we do a confidence interval. So we used a random sample of 27 taken out of 15, and we decided to do a 99% confidence interval. So just to practice this again, we go to stat, and now we are going to go to confidence interval, and this is a 1 proportion Z interval. And so we talked to 15, said yes out of 27, and we've been asked to change the confidence level to 99. Okay, so we're 99% confident that the interval from captures the true proportion of teens who text while driving. Okay, so what do we get? Well, the calculator produced the numbers 0.31 if I round and 0.80. So what am I looking for? So in this, if they reported this, I'm looking inside this interval and I say to myself, since 0.77 does fall within the interval, we have evidence to support the recent study, don't we? That study fell in that confidence interval, and at this point, that's kind of all we know. So it says, can I use a confidence interval to draw a conclusion for a two-sided test? And that's exactly what I did. Now, what would it look like if it was a two-sided test? Let me show you. In exactly the same way, if it was a two-sided test, we go to stat and we go stat test, and we'd plug in the same information, but our P0 would be what we think is the truth. And again, our successes were 15, I text out of 27, and a two-sided test means you leave it like that. So when I hit enter, notice that I get a low p-value. So you're gonna reject the null hypothesis. So this is kind of a way using both tools to get to the same conclusion.